Flying a strike into a fortified coast in broad daylight is a reliable way to lose aircraft. The launchers pick you up early and have all the time they need. So when American planes flew directly over Greater Tunb, crossing a missile-armed island in plain sight of every radar on it, the defenses should have lit up. They barely fired. For an island built to threaten everything moving through the strait, that silence needs explaining. The airstrikes did not cause it. This was one of the most hardened positions in the Gulf. Fortified over decades, ranged across the Strait of Hormuz, it gave Iran a physical grip on the waterway that most of the region's trade moves through. The island had one design principle: no single attacker could break it. Ships get hit by the anti-ship missiles. Aircraft get hit by the air defenses. The United States did not answer that with more firepower. It answered with two services moving as one, each filling a gap the other could not, time to the minute. The island never got a clean picture of what was dismantling it. This is Navy intel. What the Navy and Air Force pulled off over Greater Tunb is one of the most tightly coordinated joint efforts this campaign has seen. Two services on the same clock, each covering what would have killed the other, so thoroughly that the island never landed a blow against either. We are going to take that apart, step by step. Stay to the end, and you will stop asking which branch won. You will start asking whether there were really two branches at all. Start with the trap. Why this island could beat either service acting on its own. Greater Tunb is barely 2 miles across, but its location does most of the work. It sits at the western mouth of the Strait of Hormuz, right where the shipping lanes pinch through the Gulf's narrowest water. Weapons on that rock can reach straight across the passage every ship in the region must use. Hold this piece of ground and you hold a lever over one of the most heavily trafficked waterways on the planet. Iran knew what it had. Over the years, it turned the island into something more than a base. Strategists call what Greater Tunb became an unsinkable aircraft carrier. A warship can be sunk, chased off, or run dry. An island cannot. Solid rock can also be hollowed out in ways no ship's hull ever could. The Revolutionary Guard did exactly that. Early warning radar on the high ground, anti-ship missiles covering the water, fast attack boats ready to swarm anything that got close. Layer by layer, a bare rock became a fortress built to see everything in the strait, hit it, and absorb being hit back. How they made it survivable shaped the whole problem. What Iran built has a name in military doctrine: anti-access/area denial, A2AD. The concept is old and straightforward. You do not try to match a stronger enemy head-on. You build overlapping threats around a position so that the closer he comes, the more he has to survive simultaneously, until the cost of getting there is higher than the prize. Each ring protects the one inside it. From the outside in, the layers go like this. The first is detection. Early warning radars on high ground, scanning tens of miles in every direction, built to catch an approaching force and feed those tracks to the weapons. Everything else depends on this tier. Blind it and the fortress is guessing. Inside that sits the long-range anti-ship missile layer, built to engage major warships before they close the distance. Inside that are the short-range systems, fast attack boats that swarm whatever gets through. And running through all of it are the air defenses, covering the sky above every other layer. Each ring covers the gaps in the next. Lose one, the others hold. There is one more thing that makes this harder to crack than a simple gun line. Almost nothing on that island can be reached with a normal strike. The radars, the launchers, the boats, the Revolutionary Guard, put them in reinforced bunkers and tunneled them into the granite bedrock, behind blast doors that open for the seconds needed to fire and then shut again. From the outside, the island looks nearly bare. The weapons are inside the rock, and the rock is the protection. A strike that scorches the surface does nothing. Everything rides out the attack underground and comes back online once the aircraft have gone. Now you see the problem. The island was built to punish whichever approach you took. Come with the fleet, and the anti-ship layer is already aimed at you. Missiles that fly low and fast, skimming the wave tops so a ship's radar cannot separate them from the surface until there are only seconds left. Come by air, and the air defense layer is waiting. The weapon that can actually reach infrastructure buried in rock is heavy and slow, carried by aircraft that must hold a steady line over the target. That is exactly the profile those defenses were designed to intercept. A single service attack does not just fight the island. It walks the whole gauntlet alone, with no one clearing the layer built specifically against it. That was the puzzle. And the answer was not a bigger weapon. It was to stop approaching from one direction and instead peel the gauntlet apart from two sides at once, each service removing the ring that would have stopped the other. That is the operation. Before any heavy weapon crossed the target, the Navy attacked the one layer everything else depended on, the island's ability to see. In doctrine, that is the opening move against a defended coast, suppression of enemy air defenses, SEAD. Here the fleet ran it not with bombs but with the electromagnetic spectrum. The EA-18G Growler exists for this phase. The Navy's carrier-based electronic attack jet was built for exactly this opening act. General Dan Kane, the nation's senior military officer, described the approach: coordinated space and cyber operations running alongside electronic attack, leaving an adversary, in his words, disrupted, disoriented, and confused. On the island, that plays out concretely. Electronic jamming floods the early warning radars until a real contact drowns in false noise. Cyber operations cut into the command network that connects the separate radars and launchers into a single picture and sever those threads. What is left is a system with every weapon physically intact and no shared targeting data to use them. Each launcher working alone, half-blind, not sure what is real. A battery that does not know where the target is cannot shoot at it. The fleet took the island's eyes before it touched a single weapon. Then came the shield. This is what fuses two services into one instrument. The moment the strike begins, Iran fires back, putting anti-ship missiles at the fleet and the aircraft working the island. The counter is integrated air and missile defense, built around Aegis destroyers, and Aegis no longer fights only to the edge of its own radar horizon. Through cooperative engagement capability, a destroyer can fire on an incoming missile it cannot yet detect itself, because an E-2D Hawkeye or an F-35 flying higher is already tracking it and passing the firing solution down the data link. One platform sees, another shoots. The ship launches an SM-6 on someone else's track, reaching out at a threat still below its own mast's line of sight. That web of fire covers not just the destroyers but the whole strike package, so the aircraft working the island can keep working while incoming missiles are intercepted well short of anything they are aimed at. The same network that shields the force also serves the targeting. F-35s fly as sensors over the island, sorting real launchers from decoys, fusing everything into a single picture every platform sees simultaneously. The carriers' strike aircraft add their weight to the inbound waves. Destroyers hold tomahawks capable of knocking out exposed surface infrastructure from beyond the horizon without putting a pilot over the target. What the fleet cannot do is drive a warhead into hardened rock. Tomahawks destroy what stands in the open. They do not reach what is sealed inside a mountain. By the time the decisive blow was ready, the Navy had cut the island's sensors, thrown a defensive canopy over the whole strike, and stripped away every layer within reach. One remained: the weapons buried in the rock. That was the Air Force's problem. The weapons on that island live under meters of solid granite, and conventional ordnance cannot touch them. A surface blast sends its energy outward into open air. The chambers underneath never feel it. Reaching them requires a different class of weapon entirely. A bunker buster does not rely on its explosive to do the penetrating. It relies on mass and speed. A hardened steel casing dropped from altitude arrives, moving fast enough that its own kinetic energy, concentrated behind a narrow nose, drives the body through rock and reinforced concrete before anything detonates. The warhead does not trigger on impact. A delayed fuse holds the explosion until the body has already bored deep, so the surrounding rock contains the blast and collapses the chamber from within, rather than venting it harmlessly into the air above. That is why these weapons are heavy, and why the Air Force's platforms are the ones that carry them to a defended target. The Pentagon has not officially said which weapon hit Greater Tunb. All we have publicly is precision munitions. Working from the target, though, one weapon in the inventory fits better than anything else, and it is worth naming as the best estimate: the GBU-72, the Advanced 5K Penetrator. This is a 5,000-pound bomb the Air Force developed specifically for hardened, buried targets. Inside is the BLU-138 warhead, a penetrator body weighing over 4,000 pounds, mated to a satellite-guided JDAM kit that places it within feet of an aim point. Released from high altitude, it trades height for the speed needed to dig. Its designers have said it reaches buried targets far more effectively than the older GBU-28 it replaced. It is also not hypothetical. Reporting from earlier in this campaign describes it being used against Iranian anti-ship missile sites, which is exactly the category Greater Tunb falls into. We cannot confirm it was the GBU-72 over the island that morning, but if you needed to reach launchers behind blast doors inside granite, this is the weapon you would reach for. Now consider what had to be true before those aircraft could make the run. They came in slow, loaded with ordnance, holding a steady line over the target to place each weapon accurately. That is the least agile, most exposed flight profile in the campaign. One active launcher on that island, and it turns into a disaster. The reason it did not is that the launchers were already blind, and the sky above was already covered by the fleet. The Air Force brought the one blow capable of cracking the island open. The Navy is the reason it could be delivered. The timing carries its own message. This all happened in daylight. Penetrating strikes on fortified positions are typically flown at night. Running this one in full morning light, straight over an island built to stop exactly this, was a statement of its own. The defenses had already been beaten down so thoroughly that there was no longer any reason to hide. The daylight was proof the sequence had already run, not a display of confidence. So the 90 minutes of strikes were not one branch's doing. They were the last step in a handoff, the Air Force putting the blow in that the Navy had spent the preceding hours making survivable. Step back from that morning and try to separate it into a Navy piece and an Air Force piece. You cannot, and that is the point. Was it the bunker busters? Flown in over active defenses, they would have taken losses no one was prepared to accept. Was it the Navy alone? Destroyers were not built to drive warheads through the core of a fortified island. Was it the electronic blinding alone? A deaf island still has its launchers. Each capability was decisive in its specific place. What took the island was the order it all happened in. The sensors cut before the strike flew. The shield up before the answer could land. The deep blow delivered only after the target was already softened and blind. Change that sequence, and the same forces produce a different outcome. Iran built the right trap for any single service. Come by sea, the missiles find you. Come by air, the air defenses do. The trap had one flaw, and it was not in the hardware. It assumed the attacker would come as one thing. What arrived was two parts of the same force moving as one. The Navy reaching out to blind and to cover. The Air Force flying into the space that opened to put the blow in. Both running off the same picture, the same network, in the same minutes. The launchers never got a clean look at any of it. The bigger lesson here is not about this island specifically. The hardest thing to build in modern warfare is not a better missile or a heavier bomb. Plenty of countries have those. The hardest thing is the handoff itself, getting a cyber operator, an Aegis crew, a carrier pilot, and a bomber crew onto a single clock so each move lands exactly when the next one needs it. Iran had capable hardware and the geography of a fortress. What it could not produce was two services that fight as one. That is what Greater Tunb demonstrated, not the firepower of either branch. The fact that you could not find where one stopped and the other began. That fortress sat silent through 90 minutes of strikes it was built to absorb. It did not fall to a bigger weapon. It fell because of the order in which the blows landed. The Navy cut the sensors. The Navy sealed the sky. The Air Force flew in the weapon that could reach the tunnels. Each service walked into exactly the trap Iran had laid for it. Each walked through because the other had already opened it from the far side. The island was designed to beat a fleet or an air force. It was never designed for both at once. Iran built something no single service could take, so the United States stopped sending one. The Navy blinded it. The Air Force broke it. When it was over, there was no clean line between where one branch's fight ended and the other's began. That is worth keeping in mind the next time a headline credits a strike like this to one service and one weapon. The bomb that reached the tunnels was the last step. Everything that made that step possible was the real work.